Hey guys, how are you? I'm here with Christopher Edwards, and I met Chris in a very strange situation. He was actually busking here in Raleigh, North Carolina. He was a server, got laid off, and then decided to be creative in terms of how he could generate some income in these kind of straitened circumstances with COVID. And so I grabbed him at the traffic lights and took an interview with him. And since then, we've been talking, and I thought I'd get his, full bio, full SP, full story. So we're here now. So you're a Raleigh guy. What do you think of Raleigh?
Raleigh's fun. I like Durham a bit more,
Okay.
personally.
What do you like about Durham?
I think the arts in the downtown area are a bit more vibrant.
Yeah. It's a little bit more art. There's a little bit more of a arts culture in Durham, a little bit more eclectic, right, compared to Raleigh.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself, brother. I want to know all your history. I want to get to know you deep and personal. So let's start from the beginning. I mean, where were you raised? Where were you born? How did it all work out for you?
So I come from a good old town called Scotland Neck, North Carolina, in Halifax County. It is a good old boy southern conservative town. A lot of hunting and fishing and football.
Conservative parents?
Conservative parents, was raised in a Southern Baptist worldview, and kind of always had that primal inclination toward the arts, toward music, toward arcades.
Right. So now, were your parents themselves artistic?
No. My mother had a sister. My Aunt Linda is super artistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so that is in the blood somewhere there. But my mother and my father later in life was supportive of me as an artist. But early on, it's the private school I went to, the peer group I had. If you weren't playing football or you weren't hunting and fishing, and you're kind of like an artsy fartsy fruitcake type, so kind of always felt some backlash against that since I was a kid.
Yeah. So now, you were the youngest or the eldest?
Middle child.
Middle child. Okay. Middle child syndrome.
Yes.
So now you went to private school. Does that mean your parents were well off?
Well, my older brother is 8 years older than me, and my younger brother is 3.5 years younger. So at one point, it was super hard for them to put all three of us through private school. And I mean, it was called Hobgood Academy, so it's not as expensive as some private schools can be.
Yeah.
They were in debt, and I think making payments all the while, but it actually broke them when all three of us were in there at the same time.
Yeah.
And they pulled me out and put me into a public school by the time I got into high school. So, but in 9th grade, I went to a public school, just so my parents could afford it.
Right, but why did they choose to pull you out?
Well, it's weird because at that point, this is sort of something that shaped my story. My older brother died in a tragic accident.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Which really floored my parents, and so they were falling into bouts of depression and prolonged periods of grief. I can't imagine what it would be like to lose, your firstborn.
What age was that, though?
So I was 13, 12 and a half, 13.
Yeah.
He was 21, 22 years old. And so he had graduated. And they were still, my brother Corey and I were still in the private school.
Yeah.
But it was hard for my mom to maintain work.
Yeah.
She just kind of fell to pieces.
Yeah.
So at that point, my parents decided, let's keep Corey in the private school. We can afford that. Let's put Chris in a public school. And I'm glad they did that because at that point I had more access to, I think, how reality really is. Like, different demographics. Is ethnically diverse.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Caucasian, white, middle class, privileged private school families,
So, like, your parents were obviously very, they felt education was very important. They wouldn't have put that money in terms of investment otherwise.
I think more or less it was just what they were doing, what people in the community were doing.
Okay.
It was expected to, send your family to Hobgood Academy because you don't want to send them to the public school in Halifax County because there's something going on about the South in that part. There's definitely a race issue going on. So predominantly there was a fear. I mean, my family, I went to holidays, like Thanksgiving dinners and stuff, and heard racist comments growing up. And so I can get into that, but that's sort of the climate that I grew up in.
Yeah.
It was a racist climate, and it completely sucks. So, like for instance, I was playing Little League one time, and no, it was like even as early as playing t-ball, as like in kindergarten, first grade. And I went to go play with the black kids in the community that were on the team. And I think the coach pulled me aside and said, "Oh, you can't be playing with those kids. Don't play with those kids. You're going to get in trouble." So ever since an early age, there was a divide in Scotland Neck, North Carolina, where I'm from. Like the African American people would predominantly live on the east side of Main Street.
Yeah.
And all the white, well-to-do families would live on the west side.
Right.
So I grew up with that. So there was a fear and a reluctance to put kids, if you grew up in a white family, in the public schools in Halifax County. But eventually, I ended up going into a public school in another county that was a bit more ethnically diverse.
Right.
So, but I'm glad that happened.
So your parents did what? What was your father's trade?
Oh gosh, so he worked in a lumber company for a while and then worked in a cotton gin, and my mother worked under a veterinarian.
Okay, so it was culturally more about kind of segregation, keeping your kids in a consistent norm. So tell me about your, you said the passing away of your brother was very influential on your future story. So the tragedy of his demise, what was your experience of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a lot of insight into it because he died of a tragic accident. It wasn't expected. My parents, went to pieces. They didn't handle it very well. And I heard my father say, how can a good God, omnibenevolent God, allow something like this to happen?
Right.
Chad was a good kid, and he was. And so I saw him question his faith and say, I'm pissed at God. I'm angry at God. The Abrahamic Christian God. And at that point, being a kid that was made to go to Sunday school all the time, I said, all right, there's something going on here. If my father is questioning, my Christian conservative father is questioning his faith and questioning the omnibenevolence and the power and the validity, really, of God in the Bible, then something's going on. So my worldview started to shake. At 12, 13, I already had some doubts, but it started to shake, so I really got into philosophy, trying to make sense of what is this? What is my existence? Is there fate? Is there a reason? Is there a destiny? And so I got in all types of so philosophy helped early on at 13, 14 years old. Then I got heavily into music.
Did you call that philosophy at that point?
I didn't know what it was. I knew that it was
just
wondering.
Existential questioning, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but those pertinent philosophical existential questions, I think, are still valid throughout life. I don't think one should stop asking those big, important questions.
But there was some sort of rock that was basically that became wavering. There became some sort of uncertainty that allowed or opened up questioning.
Absolutely. So my worldview started to shake a little bit, and I started to find sanctuary and escape through philosophy, Western philosophy as well as Eastern philosophy, and art and music. And I got my first bass guitar at 13, and got my first acoustic guitar at 14, and then electric guitar at 15. it's all downhill from there.
Wow. Fun stuff.
Yeah.
So now you getting into the arts, you getting into music. You said your parents weren't really that artistically inclined. Where your aunt was obviously some sort of influence. The inclination or the movement towards art. Tell me that in more depth.
Yeah. So it was the singular most therapeutic, cathartic outlet for me as a troubled adolescent.
Okay.
It.
So your troubles
Yeah.
as an adolescent were related to the passing away of your brother, or just generally?
So there's a culmination of things that happen as a consequence of the passing away of my brother. I was a confused kid at that point. Basically, like, what's going on? Why are my parents, checking out? My mom started to nap all the time and went to see a psychiatrist. My dad, the company that he worked for fell apart, so he had to find another company. He was having a hard time doing his best at that job, and I just sort of saw my home life crumble around me, and
You needed an outlet.
So I actually went to drugs and alcohol as an adolescent, and
From that age, from 13, 14?
Yes, yeah. But it really started to be a problem around the time I was 18. When I was 18, I realized this is a problem.
What's your definition of problem?
So, being an active addiction and dependent on a substance to function.
Okay. What kind of stuff were you taking?
Yeah, so it started out generally as harmless, like smoking grass and drinking alcohol with the peer groups in the neighborhood, kids on the bicycles,
Right.
and so.
How do you get grass at 13 years old, 14 years old?
Well, I mentioned the Little League, the team, and the black kids on the east side of the street. So I would, cross over on my bicycle and get a nickel bag of grass.
Okay.
But whatever,
And what was it doing for you?
No, so I till to this day believe in, I guess, like therapeutic benefits of marijuana for people. It helps a lot of people. There's CBD out there, but there's some psychological addictive components of it. I choose not to do it. Today, I'm full throttle in recovery. I'm a proponent of some psychedelics for spiritual therapeutic healing purposes, but personally, at this point in my life, I'm super raw into recovery. Nothing but bread and water, my friend.
Bread and water, okay. A bit of cheese would do good as well.
I had cheese in a charcuterie board last night, actually.
Oh, wow.
That I made myself.
Okay.
So I got into the arts, I got into drugs and alcohol, I got into philosophy. It was all to sort of escape the world around me crumbling and the indirect neglect that was happening with my family. My parents, I'm sure they loved me and they wanted to be there for me, but they were going through so much like emotional turmoil, and they didn't handle the death of their first son that well. And so I was just sort of in a corner, like forced to try to figure out life for myself.
Right.
And
now, there's a couple of questions there, which is, do you feel naturally you were experimental anyway? That is, we go through circumstances, we go through difficulties, but people handle them in different ways depending on their nature. So if you were experimental in the first place, it may have encouraged you to experiment more. So do you feel you're naturally experimental?
Absolutely, as an artist. So and as a child, playing in the woods, having a sense of wonder when I first saw the snow, and being in the woods and reading books and having an active imagination. Super experimental.
Yeah.
From the first.
So what's your relationship with your parents now?
So we're on good terms. My father has passed, and before he passed, he was super supportive. Or he, like, on his deathbed, so to say, he said, "I don't want my life to hinder you or your brothers from achieving your happiness. So if you want to go back to school and finish your psych degree, I think that's a great idea. If you want to pursue music, I think that's a great idea. I don't want to stand in the way of your happiness, and I encourage you." And it was one of the first times I ever heard my father stand behind me instead of trying to say, you need to fall back into this rigid way of life, like a conservative Christian sort of cookie cutter lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I did get a lot of that from my parents, but my father and I made amends before he died, and he was actually there to get me out of trouble quite a few times, which I appreciate. And a lot of the guys and fathers out there that don't give their kids emotional support, but will help them out of a jam, what can you do? You know, you got to be great. I'm grateful for my dad for doing that. My mother and I are on great terms now, absolutely. Yeah. And it took her longer than my father to recover from that.
Yeah.
Because they were both in a funk for a while. My dad got out of it after about 5 years. My mom, it took about 10 to 14 years.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you talk about it with have you spoken with your mother about it, about their handling of the situation?
Yeah, we can talk super openly about it now. It was a sore subject for a while because I had some resentment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now
that took a while. It really did, and it took a lot of therapy for me, really, to sort of sort some things out.
So tell me your story. We'll go into your intellectual curiosity, but I want to know about your story as to where you are now. So what are the the real world activities that you pursued to get to where you are right now?
Well, recently.
So you went to school. You went to university.
Yeah.
You sounds like you studied a psychology degree.
Psychology and philosophy.
Okay.
And a little bit of theater.
Okay. You pursued that. Did you complete that? You left it in the middle.
Left it in the middle. So
and then Okay. So
so my goal is now that I'm 35. I'm at a point where the world is my oyster. The sky's the limit. I'm in recovery. I have some time behind me now.
So what does recovery mean for people who don't understand that word?
So recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. So that means I choose on a daily basis not to put any mood or mind-altering chemical in my body, so that the disease of addiction, that itch, that craving, doesn't become ignited, activated, and it doesn't flare up.
Right.
Like an allergy.
But recovery, is that something that when you use the word recovery, does that mean you're somebody recently moving out of a situation which was, drug dependent, or is it a case of you use that term ongoing, even 10, 15, 20 years on?
Ongoing. And so there's a little bit of different think tanks about this, schools of thought about, and even models of addiction. Like people think there's a choice model, people think that's a medical disease model. There's a lot of studies that back up the disease, the biological and the physical disease model of addiction. So recovery within that means that it's going to be an ongoing thing, but for all intents and purposes, after 72 hours to 30 days, you're in recovery, but it's in remission. So the disease, the active addiction phase, is in remission and you're doing well. So after about 5 to 10 years, it's up to you, I think, if you want to say that you're still in recovery.
Okay.
If you're doing what it takes. But I know people that in a larger community that continue to go to meetings, mutual aid societies, and to seek spiritual development as well as character development, so to continue to grow, not to fall back into those old behaviors and old patterns that were addictive. So I think, for me, I know it's probably going to be an ongoing process. Now, will I still say that I'm in recovery? I think I will always advocate for recovery, because I think it gives hope to people that are struggling with, say, alcoholism. Super common. People that don't know that they're drinking so much, but they feel like crap in the morning. They got to know that, there is another way. You don't have to send yourself off to oblivion every night. There's, different ways to enjoy life.
So you don't drink anymore?
No.
Okay, so, what do you think the cause of addiction is? Why do people go into alcohol?
Gosh,
is that a big question?
No, absolutely. So I think humans, and really some species of animals in the wildlife, they like to alter their state of consciousness. I think it is a natural part of the human condition to want to change the status quo, to want to change ourselves, to want to change our makeup. So anything from eating mushrooms to eating fermented grapes, it's been going on since the beginning of history, from human history.
Right.
Now, the misuse of substances and the dependence on substances and the addictive qualities, I think, is what both nature and nurture. It's a complex interplay of both of those.
Okay.
So there's a genetic component. You know, my grandfather was an alcoholic, and on both sides. And so some life stressors could sort of ignite that predisposition to addiction. And then I think maybe like if you have a peer group that's just like shoving that's all about drinking and doing keg stands, and then you're just like, geez, this feels good. And maybe you just got laid off. Now this is a go-to because I know it feels good. It's gonna, you know. So I think it's complex.
So if you had kids, would you encourage them to drink?
I'd let them do what they want to do, but I would also be a resource for them. I'd advise them, you know, to be careful.
Yeah.
And I would probably share my story with them as well, so that they know that I'm a resource to go to if they ever have problems with it.
Yeah, and you might have kids. I just didn't hear.
Yeah, one day. Yeah.
I didn't hear.
No, I don't have kids now.
right. I was
getting old and my
it's an
biological
assumption
clock
on
is
my
ticking.
part, but
Maybe one day.
okay. So now let's talk a little bit more about life. You know, I'm really interested in the whole idea of meaning and why we're here, what's the purpose. I've always questioned and pondered this point of view, and so it seems as if you've thought about it. What's your methodology of thinking about why you exist and the purpose of your life? What's the methodology?
That's what my new teachings and studies of Zen have taught me, that it's really all absurd and we can talk about it, but wow, let's have a cup of tea. Or, do you hear that bird over there? And that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
You know, just living your life. So I think I love logic and I love reason.
So your framework is logic and reason.
Yeah, I think somewhat.
Okay.
Somewhat.
So let's look at that. Let's reflect on that point. Is there a way of a human being able to understand life or existence other than through logic and reason?
Yeah, absolutely. So my subjective experience and my understanding of reality is sort of filtered through my senses and my neurochemical makeup and my social conditioning. You know, I was thrown into this universe at a certain time of history and a certain socioeconomic status within a certain family in a certain period of history. You know, super unique, a wanted child of the universe, right? And I'm here. So therefore, life is going to be, the way I experience life is going to be different than the way you or any other conscious entity experiences life.
Right.
Now, I think that if through language and through logic and reason, I can deduce some things. I think language definitely helps us all agree on things like mathematics. Helps us have these chairs that we're sitting in. You know, so language and things like math and reason, they help us all agree on some things that are, I at least think, somewhat tangible and permanent in the universe, at least somewhat solid.
Yeah.
You know, we can say that gosh, we can both agree that there's a table in front of us.
That's
but our experience of the table may be somewhat different.
Right.
And at a molecular level, the atoms might be going really fast and it's not really solid. But for all intents and purposes, we can sort of agree that that's there through the use of our senses and of language. We can talk about things in the universe.
So reason and intellect and math and logic, they're all communication platforms between humans, right? For understanding. So you're using that now to communicate with me, and you're going to express your point of view through that. So I think reason and logic is probably important as a framework, because without it we can't agree on things, because there isn't a common platform through which we can agree.
Right.
Now, when you start reasoning and you look at your life and your existence, there is two questions, or there is one question with two directions, and I would think that the person normally tries to rationalize, whether they're here by a random process or a non-random process first of all. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, that question is definitely valid. It has been my experience.
Do you think you're here by chance or by design?
It depends on what framework you want to look at it. It could be by intelligent design of life as it has evolved from the beginning of things, as far as we can fathom. But through a materialistic, naturalistic worldview, I think it is designed evolutionarily therein. So, in that sense, I would say there's intelligent design.
So,
but just by the laws of nature, the laws of nature, without any attribution to a sentient being. So, but first, my inclination to answer that question is to say it's all by chance and random.
Okay.
But now I'm here, so let's make the best of it. Because this is precious. This is super precious. Now, but I definitely think if you want to say that there is intelligent design and I'm here because of some purpose, well, I'd say yes, for the simple fact that I'm here. That's the reason in and of itself. And you look at cause and effect till the beginning of time, beginning of fathomable history, you have atoms just crashing into space, and then things forming and evolving, and then wow, so we are, here we are.
So let's take it the other way. Let's answer it from the other direction. How have you handled the existential questions? What's your conclusion? So what are your conclusions? What's your outcome? How are you living your life right now?
Yeah, I like this. So at the end of the day, I really think life is super tough, and reality is a hard pill to swallow. Some people, that's not their experience. But my attitude does not have to suffer. If I look at my hands and am grateful that I have the illusion of free will, at least, and I can spit to the left, spit to the right, I can walk toward a goal and conform my actions toward an intention I have and make things happen, that's great. I can increase the capacity for meaningful experiences in my life. Therefore, that keeps depression at bay. And therefore, it also might help other people realize that, hey, life's short, we're gonna die anyway, and as long as I don't have a crippling disease, why don't I just increase my capacity for meaningful, beautiful experiences, and then hopefully leave the world a better place?
So what is your definition of meaningful?
Yeah, so for me, meaningful, it's a day-to-day thing. So today, I want to strengthen the content within my realm of influence. I want to spread love, and I want to get people to question themselves, question the world around them, increase their potential for happiness and meaning, whatever that is for them. So for me, it is I want to experience like the cardinal truths, to be a good person, to grow in wisdom, to be a monk, to be a sage, to be a samurai, all at the same time.
Yeah.
A ninja, mystic warrior.
Yeah. So you said you've kind of ventured into the Eastern philosophy, and you've obviously experienced the Western philosophy as well.
Yeah.
What are your experiences of the two? How do they differ? How do they compare and contrast?
Yeah. Well, now Eastern philosophy is super popular with the resurgence of mindfulness.
Yeah.
I don't, not to say resurgence, but sort of say the emergence of mindfulness in the West, sort of popularized by John Kabat-Zinn and Alan Watts in the 60s all the way up through the 80s and 90s. And so mindfulness now is a big part of different psychotherapy and therapy tools, therapeutic models these days, like CBT, DBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's sort of like an emergence of East and West. But So I enjoy meditation. I do practice sitting meditation and Zazen meditation from Zen, and but I definitely just like the way Western philosophy helps me think and reason and question reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Voltaire, and it helps me question power systems.
Who's Voltaire? Tell me a
Voltaire
little
was an
bit more about.
Enlightenment period philosopher
Yeah.
in France. He was an author as well. And crush infamy was one of his famous quotes. He said, if God didn't exist, it would be necessary to invent him.
Right. For
he
what
would-
reason?
I guess to give us meaning and purpose in life, to feel like we have that sense of security.
If God didn't exist, we should invent him.
It would be
because-
necessary to invent
so
him.
what he's saying is we need to create some sort of rock, some sort of certainty.
Yep. Or else
Where-
we're just we're scared.
Otherwise, we're just going to be like a ship in the ocean without an anchor. So what we're saying is,
But that's beautiful, right?
what being a ship in the ocean without an anchor?
Yeah.
Not according to Voltaire, you say. We can't handle the uncertainty.
but he was, he wasn't advocating that that's what we do.
Right.
He was just saying that that's what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't advocating. He was super, he was super for like a secular state
Yeah.
and the arts and not having, because he was imprisoned several times by the was it like Jesuit college as well as a Catholic priest and just sort of like the Christian powers that be
Yeah.
in Europe imprisoned him for writing material that made people think about life, and he was advocating for reason and science
Yeah.
and empiricism, and that could get you in trouble back in the day, for sure.
But what does it tell you about the human being that it needs to have an anchor, some sort of certainty? What is that saying about us as a species? That we can't handle it? That
So this is getting
Is it
this is
in
getting
it-
a little blurry now. I'm not exactly sure I understand your question. Are you
Well-
referring to Voltaire specifically, or?
Well, I'm saying I'm referring to his observation. The fact that if you stand back, he's saying that there is a need for the human to have an anchor,
Yeah.
right? What does that tell you about the human species itself? That they can't handle reality without an anchor.
Yeah.
Isn't that
So
isn't that a weakness?
it is a
in
weakness.
the design of the human?
Or design, so maybe the culmination of the human. So I say
Or
he
is
would
searching
point,
the opportunity?
Yeah, he would assert or posit that science could be just as fulfilling as an anchor. Sort of a naturalistic worldview is just as fulfilling and comforting as someone who believes in reincarnation or believes that that they're going to live with their loved ones consciously once they die
Yeah.
in heaven. That's a comforting thought. And gosh, I kind of wish that were true. But
So now you go into meditation, you do meditation. What does that do for you?
I really think it keeps me sober.
Okay. So
And it keeps me from being more of a dick than I could be on otherwise.
right. So what are you doing in the meditative process that is keeping you centered?
So, what is it? Vipassana meditation, sitting meditation, zazen. I just sit with my butt a little bit higher than my knees on a cushion and my back straight up. And I have a little hand mudra here that I relax, and shoulder, spine straight. Kind of just stare down, relax my eyes, keep my eyes open, as in a lot of Zen meditation, you keep your eyes open. Sometimes I close my eyes and relax my palms on my lap, and I pay attention to my breath. I try to relax my chest and my shoulders, and pay attention to in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, maybe the sights and sounds,
Yeah.
the pattern on the wall. And if I have a thought, if I have a worry, if I have an obsession about a bill that I have to pay, etc., I notice that I'm having, the swirlies and the thoughts, and then I bring my attention back to my breath, and then back to this moment. What is this? What is experiencing this? And so I'm asking myself those questions in order to reorient myself with the observing mind, not the thinking mind, but the mind that's just like sees those sunglasses, experiences this moment without any commentary.
Okay,
So the breath, and then like that mantra of asking yourself, what is this? Who am I? What am I? What is this experience? So you're strengthening your consciousness to pay attention and to be present. And
So what you're seeming to suggest is that we have a wandering mind that is
Definitely.
active all the time, and we're probably not aware of its wandering.
For sure.
And then what you're doing with that meditative process is you're basically exercising a muscle that is controlling that wandering mind by being the observer and kind of anchoring to your observation as a way of reining in that wandering.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so how does that help you stay sober?
So throughout my daily life, if I am stressed or I have an inclination to pursue a vice, I can pause and I can see that tendency emerge, and I can sort of arrest it with some space and look at it and say, man, I don't know if that's going to turn out okay. Are you sure you want to follow through with this in an automatic sort of fashion?
Yeah.
And I just take some breaths and have some pause, and then I'm able to watch that dissipate.
So you basically are, you've been able to exercise a muscle, what I would call the willpower muscle.
Exactly, yeah.
And you've strengthened it to a point where it's directional, and so you can step back and observe what's going on and then direct your thinking. So you've basically created a mindset through the meditation by what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what
That and journaling helps a lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
so talk about journaling.
Journaling is the Stoics, ancient Greco-Roman Stoics. Some Stoics, by the way, are believe in the logos and God and fate. Other Stoics were super atheistic.
So
But-
tell
so I
me what a
wanted-
Stoic is, first of all.
Yes. Stoicism is a school of philosophy, ancient Greco-Rome, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca,
Greco-Rome means Greece, and it's
Roman cultures, yeah,
Okay.
and history. So, gosh, Seneca was actually in the Bible. Seneca's brother persecuted, I think, Paul in Acts. So, Stoicism is as old as, what is it?
2000?
First century AD? Right? No, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, 2000 years.
So around that time period, so Stoicism was vibrant. And actually Paul talks about like how you shouldn't hang out with those Stoics in Acts. But anyway, Stoicism was just a school of philosophy in ancient Greco-Rome and history that deals with, it's a virtue ethics philosophy. So it talks about adhering to the four cardinal virtues. What are they? Like wisdom, temperance. God, you can tell I'm a little rusty here.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool.
So, yeah.
But in essence,
Four
though,
cardinal virtues.
but in essence,
Yeah, temperance, fortitude, prudence, justice, Prudence being wisdom, yeah. Yeah, so, in essence, it's like the world is what you make it. I can't control the craziness out there from the tyrants that be, but I can control if I'm gonna sit on my ass or I'm gonna go out and make some money while socially distancing on the street while then people can Venmo me some cash. I can control my attitude, right? But I can't control the milieu out there, the climate out there. But I can maybe influence it through consistent, persistent action, right? So we were about to talk about something before I mentioned the Stoics. What were we talking about?
We were talking about how we were talking about journaling and how.
Oh yeah. So the Stoics had an exercise that they were proponents of, journaling being one of them, doing a ritual in the morning and a ritual at night. Ritual in the morning, sort of like setting the intention for your day about what you're going to do, and then at the night having a nightcap and like looking at it, where did you go wrong? Keeping a tally on it, how can you improve? And really just trying to cultivate yourself and cultivate your character as a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do that, and that helps.
So
that
why
increases,
why would the Stoics have been anti-Paul in that philosophy?
What are you saying? How are they what?
Anti-Paul, meaning you said one of his brothers killed Paul.
Oh.
I'm saying, why would they be?
No. So
why are those two?
I don't think Seneca was a Stoic. Okay. I don't know if his brother was a Stoic. I know his brother was a Roman statesman.
Okay.
And so Paul used to be, I think, a statesman in Rome. But so there were a lot of people that did not like Christianity, as it was growing during the first century. People thought it was a bunch of crap. I mean, and people still probably.
But what I'm saying is, what those pillars don't seem to be inconsistent with what the philosophy of Christianity was espousing.
They're similar.
Yeah,
I think some of it is similar. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
There's no savior. There's no savior in Stoicism.
Okay. So you do journaling to anchor your mind as well. So now let's talk about the future. Let's talk about your hopes and dreams.
Yes.
Let's talk about a little bit of the music that you do. Let's break down the music. I'm really interested in, I'm not really a musician. I don't really, I don't have a pedigree in the arts. So enlighten me a little bit.
Yeah. So I've been in bands my whole life. Everything ranging from punk rock to metal. Yeah, mostly just like punk rock and metal and alternative rock bands, indie bands, noise groups, sort of some electronica stuff as well. So in a group setting, that's generally what I gravitate towards.
What does it do for you?
Oh gosh, it's super cathartic and therapeutic, and it's fun to collaborate and to build music with the chemistry of different inputs. It's making a collage, it's making something beautiful.
Yeah. Are you good?
I don't know. I can tell you that I've been playing bass and guitar since I was 13, and I'm 35 now.
Okay.
And so I've been singing and writing songs this entire time.
Okay.
And I constantly try to improve myself. I recently got into overtone and throat singing and beatboxing, so...
Now you have... Wow. That's more than I can do. But listen, so you're going to be able to provide some sort of audio to go behind this video, perhaps?
Sure,
do you have
absolutely,
Do you have a digital file that can go behind?
Yeah, I do.
That we can play your track?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that later on. So we're talking about music being cathartic. You express yourself through it. What is music?
Right? So it's just a combination of different sounds that are pleasant to the.
Why do we love music?
Oh gosh, I think for the same reason that we love stories and that we love the arts and theater and movies. It is a way for us to escape and live vicariously through something else.
Yeah.
And music can really heal your emotional state, I think, or like some emotional blockages. when I listen to Bad Religion, or when I listen to some punk music or Jane's Addiction, or any, like 90s rock or 90s punk, I will get, it's just like a mystical, shamanic, entrancing state.
Yeah.
And I feel better after I listen to it, and especially after performing. Performing for me is an ecstatic experience. It's almost like a spiritual experience, because I am bringing my music and my life force that has, something that's helpful for me, and I'm sharing it with the masses, and just with the thought that maybe someone else will groove to it, or maybe it will lighten the vibe of someone else. It's like, I can die happy now. Oh
Yeah.
God, hey.
So it's almost as if there is frequency and rhythm,
Yeah.
and music allows you to align with that natural state of frequency and rhythm that exists within the universe, and where it's aligned perfectly, there is that serenity or peace and peaceful death that you will be able to experience.
Yeah.
So what are your future hopes and dreams? What are you...
Yeah.
What's the future hold for you, mentally, actionably, in terms of impact, and then in terms of future family, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I've gotten a couple of certificates. I have my recovery coach certificate. I have a peer support specialist certificate. Back in January, I got hired at a couple of agencies, but didn't go through with that. So now I'm at a point where it's like I definitely am. I'm done waiting tables. So there's a.
Tell me your experience of waiting tables. Was it good?
For a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it gave me
Would you
a lot of
advise other
social
people?
intelligence.
Okay.
It
You would
really
advise
helps.
other people to do it?
You do what you have to do to get through.
Okay.
But it's not meaningful for me. It's not meaningful long term.
So it's a means to an end.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I want to do is sort of combine therapy, life coaching, and counseling with the arts.
Okay.
That's what I want to do. So basically, that's going to probably involve me finishing my psych degree and then going for like a master's of social work or something like that, and finding a way to combine my love for the arts and music and that experience, and combining it with therapy. Maybe developing my own practice one day. Having my own license, sort of agency or business of life coaching.
Do you want to be rich?
That would help. But
Is money important to you?
Money is a tool, but at the end of the day, man, geez, no.
So
It's not all there is. I think
you'd be okay to be a poor counselor.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up kind of poor, so I mean, it's good. I like money so I can collect old electronics, because I
Okay.
like old micro cassette recorders and vintage audio equipment, and that's fun. That makes me feel good when I walk into a room and I have nice things. But outside of that, like, for the ability to be able to travel is nice. So money that allows me to travel and maybe from time to time go out and have a decent meal. Money can buy happiness if you're poor, but outside of that, it's not. I think it's a danger, and it can lead to a lot of power trips and superficiality and divide from people to people, and being able to relate to the guy on the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking.
But I'm not allergic to it.
Okay, that's good to know. So we're talking about coaching. We're talking about therapy. We're talking about putting together a practice. Maybe your own kind of theology or therapeutic ideas.
Yeah.
That's what the future holds for you.
Yeah.
What about your spiritual journey? What's happening as far as your spiritual journey, your intellectual journey going forward into the future is?
So self-discipline is huge. I'm a big proponent of self-discipline, because my self-care, my meditation, my journaling, and my reading, all that is super important to me. Finding a Zen teacher and maybe enrolling into some Tai Chi, Qigong classes, so I can just like feel myself in my body, and be in a group with people that are, maybe sharing the same values as myself.
What would you describe as your values?
Oh, love, light, integrity, honesty, creativity, compassion, service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Curiosity.
curiosity. And then in terms of, are you looking to raise a family? Would you describe yourself as somebody who can envision themselves with, kids and, a partner for life? Or what's your philosophy on family?
Yeah. There are a couple people out there right now that I'm not going to name drop. You know who you are. No. So, gosh, I mean, I'm busking right now because I didn't have an emergency fund. So the idea for me is to finish my degree and to sort of beef up the amount in my savings so that I can actually be a man that is a quality mate.
Yeah.
So I want to, there's some things, I still have to work on myself a little bit. I know I'm a catch, but I definitely want to beef up my savings account first so that I'm not just like a blank financial slate.
Yeah.
And that way I can bring a lot to the table and I can actually, step into like a caretaking role if need be. So that's right around the corner because I'm making some decent money right now, busking. And so yeah, that's not out of the question at all. I think I'd be a great father and a great husband.
Yeah. Do you dabble in the stocks?
Now my brother does, and my friend does, and they talk about it a lot. Maybe one day, we'll see.
Maybe you should put some of that busking money into the stock market right now. What do you think?
Well, I've been listening to a little bit of talk about this on the radio about how it's probably going to boom in some certain areas soon. So
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's down right now, so I mean, there's only one way it can go, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's right to the bottom. So, in terms of like advice, what is your advice to people? What advice would you give to people about life and living?
Yeah, find your truth, right? Find something that makes you happy, something that you're passionate about. And if you work a 9-to-5 job that makes you miserable, at least do these things that you love to do on nights and weekends.
Okay.
Make life worthwhile for yourself. And don't be a jerk, right? And if you're depressed, there's help out there. If you're going through something, there's help out there. Speak up, you're not alone, and increase your capacity for a meaningful experience for all.
How did you seek help?
Oh gosh, so music.
What I'm saying is, when you said there's help out there, I'm assuming.
So there's definitely
I'm assuming that there's people out there.
Counselors, there's agencies, there's rehab hospitals, there's detox facilities.
Right.
There's intensive outpatient programs.
Mm-hmm.
There are medical and psychiatric and psychological health professionals out there that want to help you and genuinely care, and they have the means to help, and they have the means to do so.
Okay. And so where would you like to travel to?
So first, the Yuma Desert in Arizona is apparently one of the quietest places in the United States and in the world.
You've been to Arizona?
No, not yet. So
Okay.
apparently it's just like miles and miles and miles of flat
Have you
desert. So it's like
been to-
super spacious. It's just spacious. Miles and miles and miles of flat desert as far as you can see, and you're just a little speck. And that sort of a spacious horizon, think about how alive that would make you feel. Kind of like being in the middle of the ocean and just seeing this vast space around you. That idea of being a small element of the universe,
So I guess
helps
ocean-
me feel alive, right?
I guess being in the ocean is going to be number 2 traveling spot then.
Yeah, we'll see. Gosh, I mean, yeah.
No, so you
Everywhere.
where-
India, Europe, everywhere.
So have you traveled around the US a lot?
A little bit. I've been to Seattle,
Okay.
and I've been to Philadelphia, and I've been to Florida.
So not too much.
Yeah, Stony Point, New York, to the conference.
Okay, so now, in terms of, I have a final question just to wrap this up. If there were, they always say that you are the average of the 5 people that you would like to hang around with.
Yeah.
Right? Who are the 5 people, if you had a group and you were able to experience anybody in the world, who would be the 5 people you would want to hang around with to make your average?
Can some of them be dead?
Yeah, anybody.
Yeah, jeez Louise. I don't know. What would you?
If you had a fantasy
Yeah.
peer group, what would that fantasy peer group of 5 be?
God. So I mean, I talked about archetypes earlier, about like the monk, sage, ninja, samurai.
What's the
warrior,
difference between a monk and a sage?
mystic.
Well, what's the
Monk
difference between a
philosopher.
monk,
Yeah.
sage, and mystic?
Yeah. So a mystic could be a shaman, right? Could be someone that or that is engages in practices that allows them to transcend reality and allow them to see things that we can't see and experience sort of the heights of human ecstasy.
Is that a truth?
It can be.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Truth with a small t.
Okay.
I don't believe in a truth with a big T.
Okay.
So
the
a monk,
5 people.
Yes. So I'd say like maybe Dogen. He's a Zen monk priest
Okay.
back in the day. Greg Graffin, the lead singer of Bad Religion, who was also an author. Terrence McKenna.
Okay.
Dogen, Greg Graffin, Terrence McKenna. I like Sam Harris a little bit too.
Okay.
Gosh, who else? Somebody wild, maybe like.
I thought Terrence McKenna was wild, no?
Maybe Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction. So I mean, I want to have a scientist. I want to have people like to keep my head on straight.
Okay,
Right?
so you got the mystic, monk. Is that correct?
Yeah. You
You've
got the mystic,
scientist.
the monk. You got the monk, and you got the mystic. I guess Terrence McKenna could be viewed as a mystic too, as well as Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction.
Okay.
These are, but then you have the Greg Graffin and Sam Harris, super sharp-witted dudes.
Yeah.
So you could probably take Greg Graffin and replace him with Voltaire, or you could take Sam Harris and replace him with, say, John Locke or something like that. So
Okay. So that would be your 5 people you'd want to hang around with. That would be your group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe even Robert Greene too, the author, 48
Okay.
Laws of Power guy. I don't know if you've read his material. He's really cool.
I've not read.
He wrote a book called Mastery too that you would probably love.
Yeah.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah. Okay.
Really cool guy.
All right, brother. Now, is there anything else that we've missed out that you want to kind of share with us?
Yeah, so basically, young artist, wild ADHD artist grows up, brother dies, gets confused, runs to drugs and alcohol, music and philosophy, realizes that some of that serves him, some of it doesn't. Comes out of that, knows himself, and learns that we live in an amoral world, and everything is just kind of cause and effect, cog, pulley, cord, and it's a wild world out there, but you can find little bubbles of hope and love and joy, so make the best of it, and call it a day after that.
All right, brother. Listen, thank you so much for your time. Loved hearing your story. And maybe in the future we'll get another chance. We're going to put your details up in terms of your YouTube, your website. Well, you may not have a website, but your YouTube, your Instagram, Venmo, where people can contact you. And, we'll take it from there.
Sweet.
All right, brother. Take care. Bye now.